Dracula, Chapter 8, beginning on page 115. Mina Murray's Journal. Same day, 11 p.m. Oh, but I am tired. If I hadn't promised to write in my diary every day, I wouldn't open it tonight. We had a lovely walk. Lucy, after a while, was in cheerful spirits owing to some friendly cows who came toward us in a field and frightened us out of our wits. We laughed, and it gave the day a fresh start. We had a good lunch at Robin Hood's Bay in the little old-fashioned inn. Then we walked home. Lucy is asleep and breathing softly. She has more color in her cheeks than usual and looks so sweet. I feel happy tonight because dear Lucy seems better. I really believe she has turned the corner and that we are over her sleepwalking troubles. I would be entirely happy if I only knew what was going on with Jonathan. August 11th. No sleep now, so I may as well write. I am too upset to sleep. We have had such an adventure, such a terrible experience. I fell asleep as soon as I had closed my diary. Suddenly I became wide awake and sat up with a horrible sense of fear. The room was dark, so I could see nothing, but when I stumbled across to Lucy's bed, I found it was empty. The door was shut, but not locked, as I had left it. I didn't want to wake her mother, so I threw on some clothes to search for her. Her bathrobe and dress were still hanging in their places. Thank God, I said to myself. She cannot be far, as she is only in her nightgown. I searched all the rooms of the house, with an ever-growing fear chilling my heart. Finally, I came to the hall door and found it open. I took a big, heavy shawl and ran out. The clock was striking 1, and there was not a soul in sight. I ran along the road, but could see no sign of her. I looked across the harbor to the east cliff, in the hope or fear, I didn't know which, of seeing Lucy in our favorite seat. There was a beautiful full moon with heavy black driving clouds. For a moment or two I could see nothing, as the shadow of a cloud hid St. Mary's Church and all around it. Then, as the cloud passed, I could see the ruins of the abbey coming into view, and the church and churchyard became gradually visible. There, on our favorite seat, was Lucy, half sitting and half lying. A cloud covered the moon too quickly for me to get a good look, but it seemed as though something dark was bending over the white figure. I ran down the steep steps to the pier and along by the fish market to a bridge, which was the only way to reach the east cliff. I was glad to meet no one, for I didn't want anyone to see poor Lucy in that state. The time and distance seemed endless, and my knees trembled as I climbed up the steps to the abbey. I must have gone fast, and yet it seemed to me as if my feet were made of lead. When I got almost to the top, I could see the seat and the white figure. I had been right. There was something long and black bending over her. I called in fright, "Lucy, Lucy!" and the something raised its head, and from where I was, I could see a white face and red, gleaming eyes. Lucy did not answer, and I ran on to the entrance of the churchyard. As I entered, the church was between me and Lucy, and for a minute or so I lost sight of her. When she came in view again, the cloud had passed, and I could see Lucy, her head lying over the back of the seat. She was alone. When I bent over her, I could see that she was asleep. Her lips were parted, and she was breathing in long, heavy gasps. As I came close, she raised her hand and pulled the collar of her nightgown close around her, as though she felt cold. I wrapped her in the warm shawl, fastening it at her throat with a big safety pin. But I must have pricked her with it, for she put her hand to her throat and moaned. When I had her carefully wrapped up, I put my shoes on her feet and then began very gently to wake her. At first, she did not respond. Gradually, she became more and more uneasy, moaning and sighing. Finally, I took her hand until she opened her eyes and awoke. She trembled a little and clung to me. When I told her to come home with me, she rose with the obedience of a child. As we walked along, the gravel hurt my feet, and Lucy noticed. She stopped and wanted to insist upon my taking back my shoes, but I would not. Luckily, we got home without meeting a soul. My heart was beating so loudly that I thought I would faint. I was worried about Lucy, not only for her health, but for what people might say if they saw her out like this, half-dressed. When we got in, we washed our feet, said a prayer of thankfulness together, and I tucked her into bed. She begged me not to say a word to anyone, even her mother, about what had happened. I hesitated at first to promise, but when I thought of how the story would worry her mother, I agreed. I hope what I did was right. I have locked the door, and the key is tied to my wrist, so perhaps I shall not be disturbed. Again, Lucy is sleeping soundly. Same day, noon. All goes well. Lucy slept until I woke her. The adventure of the night does not seem to have hurt her. In fact, she looks healthier this morning than she has for weeks. I was sorry to notice that I had indeed hurt her with the safety pin. I must have pinched up a piece of loose skin and pierced it right through, for there are two little red points, like pinpricks, and on her nightgown was a drop of blood. When I apologized, she laughed and said she did not even feel it. Fortunately, it is so tiny that it will not leave a scar. Same day, night. We enjoyed a happy day. The air was clear, sun bright, and there was a cool breeze. We had a picnic lunch in the woods with Mrs. Westenra. Lucy seemed more relaxed than she has for some time, and fell asleep as soon as she lay down. I shall lock the door and tie the key to my wrist again, though I do not expect any trouble tonight. August 12th. My expectations were wrong, for twice during the night I was awakened by Lucy trying to get out. Even in her sleep, she seemed impatient to find the door shut. I woke at dawn and heard the birds chirping outside of the window. Lucy woke too, and was even better than on the previous morning. All her old cheerfulness seemed to have come back to her, and she sat in bed with me and told me all about Arthur. I told her how anxious I was about Jonathan, and she tried to comfort me. August 13th, another quiet day, and I went to bed with the key on my wrist as before. Again, woke in the night and found Lucy sitting up in bed, still asleep, pointing to the window. I got up quietly and looked out. It was brilliant moonlight. Between me and the moonlight flitted a large bat, coming and going in great whirling circles. Once or twice it came quite close, but I suppose it was frightened at seeing me, and it flitted away toward the abbey. When I came back from the window, Lucy had lain down again and was sleeping peacefully. She did not move again all night. August 14th. On the east cliff, reading and waiting all day. Lucy seems to love the spot as much as I do, and it is hard to make her ever leave. This afternoon she made a strange remark. We were coming home for dinner and had stopped to look at the view. The setting sun was throwing its red light over the east cliff and the old abbey, and seemed to bathe everything in a beautiful rosy glow. We were silent for a while, and suddenly Lucy murmured, "His red eyes again, they are just the same." I turned around a little so I could see Lucy without seeming to stare at her. She looked dreamy and strange. I said nothing, but followed her eyes. She appeared to look out over our own seat, where a dark figure was seated alone. Then we went home to dinner. Lucy had a headache and went to bed early. Once she was asleep, I went out for a little stroll myself. I walked along the cliffs full of sweet sadness, for I was thinking of Jonathan. As I returned home, it was bright moonlight. I glanced up at our window and saw Lucy leaning out. I waved and called to her. She did not notice me or make any movement. Straining my eyes, I saw that Lucy was lying with her head on the windowsill and her eyes shut. Perhaps on the sill near her was what looked like a large bird. I ran upstairs, but as I came into the room, she was moving back to her bed, still asleep and breathing heavily. She was holding her hand to her throat, as though to protect it from the cold. I did not wake her, but tucked her in warmly. I made sure that the door is locked and the window securely fastened. She looks so sweet as she sleeps, but she is paler than usual, and there is a tired, haggard look under her eyes which I do not like. I think she is worrying about something. I wish I could find out what it is. August 15th, Got up later than usual. Lucy felt weak and tired and slept on after we had been called to breakfast. We had a happy surprise at breakfast. Arthur's father is better and wants the wedding to happen soon. Lucy is full of quiet joy, and her mother is glad and sorry at the same time. Later on in the day, she told me why. She is sad to lose Lucy as her very own, but she is joyful that her beloved daughter will have someone to look after her. Poor, dear, sweet lady, she has told me a sad secret. Her doctor has warned her that she has no more than a few months to live. Any shock would be almost sure to kill her. She made me promise not to tell Lucy. We were wise, after all, not to tell her about Lucy's dreadful night of sleeping. August 17th. No diary for 2 whole days. I haven't had the heart to write. Some sort of doom seems to be creeping over us. No news from Jonathan, and Lucy seems to be growing weaker, while her mother's life is slipping away. I do not understand what is happening. Lucy eats well and sleeps well and enjoys the fresh air, but all the time the roses in her cheeks are fading, and she gets weaker day by day. At night, I hear her gasping for air. I keep the key to our door always fastened to my wrist at night, but Lucy gets up and walks around the room and sits at the open window. Last night, I found her leaning out when I woke up, and when I tried to wake her, I could not. It was as though she had fainted. When she finally awoke, she was weak as water and cried silently. When I asked her why she had gone to the window, she shook her head and turned away. Could her illness be from that unlucky prick of the safety pin? I looked at her throat just now as she lay asleep, and the tiny wounds have not healed. They are still open, and if anything, larger than before, and the edges of them are white. Unless they heal within a day or two, I shall insist that Lucy see a doctor. Letter from Samuel F. Billington and Son, attorneys, Whitby, to the firm of Carter, Patterson and Company. August 17th. Dear Sirs, I am enclosing a list of goods sent by Great Northern Railway. Please deliver these to Carfax, a house near Purfleet, immediately. The house is empty, but I am enclosing a set of keys, all labeled. Please place the 50 boxes in the partially ruined building marked as A on the diagram enclosed. The building is easily recognized, as it is the ancient chapel of the mansion. The boxes will leave by train at 9:30 tonight and should arrive in your locality at 4:30 tomorrow afternoon. Leave the keys in the main hallway of the house, where the new owner will find them. I am depending upon you to carry out these instructions with your utmost speed. Yours truly, Samuel F. Billington. Letter from Carter, Patterson and Company to Samuel F. Billington, August 21st. Dear Sir, the goods have been received and delivered exactly as you instructed. The keys to the mansion were left in a parcel in the main hallway. Respectfully, Carter, Patterson and Company. Mina Murray's Journal. August 18th. Lucy is in cheerful spirits. This afternoon, as we sat in the cemetery, she reminded me, as if I needed any reminding, of the night that I found her asleep here. She tapped playfully with the heel of her boot on the stone slab and said, "My 4 bare feet didn't make such noise then." Mr. Swales would have said it was because I didn't want to wake poor Georgie, resting so peacefully under the slab. Since she seemed so talkative, I asked if she remembered anything about that night. She began hesitantly, as though she were trying to remember it all herself. "I suppose I was dreaming, but it all seemed real," she said. "I wanted to be here in this spot, but I don't know why, for I was afraid to be here too. I remember walking through the streets and over the bridge. A fish jumped as I went by, and I leaned over to look at it. The whole town seemed full of dogs, all howling at once. Then there was something with me, something long and dark with red eyes, and I was surrounded with something very sweet and very bitter all at the same time. I felt I was sinking into deep green water, and there was a singing in my ears as I have heard there is in drowning men. My soul seemed to go out from my body and float about the air. Then there was an agonizing feeling, as if I were in an earthquake, and I came back and found you shaking my body. I saw you do it before I felt you." Then she began to laugh in a way that didn't sound like her at all. I did not like it, so I changed the subject, and then Lucy was like her old self again. August 19th. Joy, 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 although not all joy. Finally, I have news of Jonathan. He has been ill, and that is why he did not write. Mr. Hawkins sent his letter to me, and I am leaving for Budapest in the morning to meet Jonathan and bring him home. I have cried over the good nurse's letter until I've soaked it through. A letter from the head nurse of the Hospital of St. Joseph and St. Mary, Budapest, Hungary, to Miss Wilhelmina Murray. August 12th. Dear Madam, I am writing on behalf of Mr. Jonathan Harker, who is himself not strong enough to write, though progressing well. He has been in our hospital nearly 6 weeks, suffering from a dangerous fever. He asks me to send his love. He will still require a few weeks' rest here, but then he will be returned home. P.S. Mr. Harker is now asleep, so I open this to add a few words. He has told me all about you and that you are to be his wife. All blessings to you both. He has had some fearful shock, and in his illness has been raving about wolves and poison, blood and ghosts and demons. Please be careful to keep him calm. The effects of an illness like this will not disappear overnight. I am so sorry not to have contacted you before, but he was carrying no identification, and we did not know who his friends were. Please believe that he has been well cared for, and that we have all learned to love his sweet, gentle nature. He is truly getting much better, and I believe in a few weeks he will be entirely well. But be careful of him. I pray you will have many, many happy years together. Dr. Seward's Diary, August 19th. Strange and sudden change in Renfield last night. About 8 o'clock, he began to get excited and sniff about like a hunting dog. The attendant noticed the change and encouraged him to talk. He is usually respectful to the attendant, but not tonight. He would not speak to the man at all, except to say, "I don't want to talk to you. You don't count now. The master is at hand." The attendant thinks Renfield has developed some sort of religious mania. If so, we must be very careful, for a strong man with homicidal and religious tendencies together might be dangerous. It is a dreadful combination. At 9 o'clock, I visited him myself. He treated me just as he had the attendant. It does not look like religious mania, and I suspect he will soon announce that he is God. For half an hour, Renfield kept getting more and more excited. I pretended not to notice, but kept an eye on him. And then that shifty look came into his eyes, the look I always see when he has gotten an idea. He became quiet and went and sat on the edge of his bed, staring into space. I tried to figure out what was happening. I asked him to talk of his pets, a subject which always interests him. At first he would not answer, but finally said, "To hell with them all. I don't care a pin about them." "What?" I asked. "You don't mean to tell me that you don't care about spiders?" Spiders are his hobby again, and the notebook is filling up with columns of small figures. To this he answered with a riddle. "The bridesmaids gladden the eyes of those who await the bride, but when the bride herself comes near, the maidens cease to shine." He would not explain himself, but remained stubbornly seated on his bed all the time. I am tired tonight and depressed. I cannot help thinking of Lucy and how different things might have been. I don't think I will sleep well tonight. Later, sure enough, I was lying awake in bed listening to the clock strike 2 when the night watchman came to say that Renfield had escaped. I threw on my clothes and ran down at once. Renfield is too dangerous a person to be roaming about. Those ideas of his might work out badly with strangers. The attendant was waiting for me. He said he had seen Renfield not more than 10 minutes before, seemingly asleep in his bed, when he had looked through the observation slot in the door. Minutes later, he had heard the sound of the window being shattered. He ran back and saw feet disappearing through the window. I followed through the window myself. The attendant told me the patient had gone to the left, so I ran in that direction as quickly as I could. As I went through the grove of trees, I saw a white figure climbing the high wall which separates our grounds from those of Carfax, the deserted mansion. I shouted back for the watchman to get 3 or 4 men immediately and follow me into the grounds of Carfax. I got a ladder and crossed the wall. Renfield was just disappearing behind the house. On the far side of the house, I found him pressed close against the old oak door of the chapel. He was talking, but I was afraid to go near enough to hear what he was saying, in case I might frighten him into running off. After a few moments, however, I noticed he was paying no attention to anything around him. After a few minutes, however, I realized he was paying no attention to anything around him, and my men had crossed the wall and were closing in on him. I walked nearer and heard him say, "I am here to do your bidding, master. I am your slave, and you will reward me, for I shall be faithful. I have worshipped you long and from far away. Now that you are near, I wait your commands, and you will not forgive me, will you, dear master, as you give me your gifts?" When we closed in on him, he fought like a tiger. He is immensely strong, more like a wild beast than a man. I never saw a madman in such a rage before, and I hope I shall not again. It is fortunate that we have found how strong and how dangerous he is. He is safe now at any rate. Houdini himself couldn't get free from the straitjacket Renfield's locked in, and he's chained to the wall in the padded room as well. His cries are awful to hear. Just now he spoke understandable words for the first time. "I shall be patient, master. It is coming, coming, coming."